Happy Wednesday, everybody. I am here. In case you missed it last week, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get a video together for Wednesday. I'm at the Cold Case Conference in New York this week, but I had a case crack script that I already had ready to go, and I really wanted to get you guys something. So we're doing a case cracked today. Also, keep in mind, on Friday, we're doing a live stream, April 19th, 10 a.m. Central. You can come and join me live. I'm going to talk about the Cold Case Conference, what type of experience I had there. I'm going to be hanging out with Morph, Tim, and Lance from Crawl Space. I think I'm going to have a lot to share with you guys. So live stream on Friday, April 19th, 10 a.m. Central. Don't miss it. There's a link down below where you can set the reminder in YouTube, but you might also want to set a personal reminder in your calendar or something like that. And we're going to do an open Q&A. I don't know how long, but I'm going to try to bank some time towards the end of the live stream so we can just chat for a bit. So if you have any questions, bring them to the live stream. Let's talk and have a good time. Today's episode of Case Cracked, I have to give a very special thank you to Mrs. Brain Scratch, my wife, who actually shot this story over to me. She does that pretty frequently. You'd be surprised. This one I like to call the coffee bar case, and you're going to see why. There's a really good reason for it. Manhattan, New York. Howard Pilmar was a 40-year-old businessman, husband, and father. He began working in his family's business, King Office Supply, on 33rd Street at the age of 4, when his father, Frank, let him sweep the aisles. In his teens, Howard was working as a cashier, and eventually he came to take over the family business and let his father retire. In the mid-1990s, King Office Supply was a thriving business. It had 50 employees and generated around $14 million a year. It also had an interesting side business. Howard started a coffee bar in the front of King Office Supply. It became so popular that they actually opened another one on West 56th Street. His wife, Rosalind, managed them. They had a 10-year-old son together, Philip, who the coffee bars were named after. But everything wasn't quite so rosy in the Pilmar home. Howard had been speaking to a divorce attorney and was planning a way out of his marriage. Things weren't looking great from his wife's perspective either. Her friends told of her complaining about Howard being verbally abusive. And there was even another tangle in this web. Rosalind's younger brother, Evan, also worked for Howard, and it appeared that he was getting somewhat involved in the marital strife. At times, Howard would be critical of Evan, and Evan commented at one time that if Howard hurt Rosalind in any way, he would kill him. Now, if someone was seriously considering murder, would they make a statement like that openly? On March 21st, 1996, Howard's life would come to a brutal end. His throat was slashed, he was stabbed dozens of times, and the attack continued well after his heart stopped beating. Howard's body was found the next morning in a hallway outside his fourth-floor office by the company controller. Investigators processed the scene and soon came to the conclusion that Howard was likely killed by someone who knew him. There were no signs of forced entry. The killing appeared to have happened soon after the security guard shift ended. It seemed clear that the suspect was familiar with Howard's business operations. Howard's wallet was found on his body with $200 in cash in it, but his watch was missing, so robbery wasn't exactly a clear motive considering the cash that was left behind. Then there are the details about the attack. Police soon considered that this must have been done by someone with close emotional ties to Howard, and that person was likely left-handed. Investigators learned that Howard's wife, Rosalind, and her brother Evan had visited Howard that night. Investigators were also curious why Evan had a cut on his left hand when they were questioning him. He said it was from a broken plate that he was cleaning up. When asked about his visit that night, he told investigators that he went to the gym with Howard and then they returned to the office together. Investigators also learned that Rosalind looked to gain a lot with Howard's death. But having proof that Rosalind and Evan visited Howard that night and looked to benefit in some ways from his death doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones that actually killed him. Even if Evan was left-handed, which he indeed was. Investigators found something else. Evan's blood was at the crime scene. However, the cut from the broken dish and his admission to being in the office when they returned from the gym kind of ruled that out. There still wasn't enough evidence to file charges and really pin the murder on him. Investigators kept digging. They took fingerprints from over 30 employees, but they just couldn't find any other viable suspects. They also couldn't find the hard proof they needed that Rosalind and Evan actually committed this crime. The coffee bar case, as the investigators referred to it, would eventually go cold. In 2013, the district attorney's cold case squad decided to reopen the coffee bar case. They began working it, and in 2017, they finally had a shot at a trial after tracking down additional witnesses. Pilmar's widow, Rosalind, now 61 years old, was arrested in New York. Her brother, Evan Wald, 45, was arrested in Virginia and extradited to New York. At their arraignment, they both pled not guilty. The case was presented to a grand jury where more than 38 witnesses testified. The grand jury agreed the case should be tried. As the trial commenced, more was uncovered about Rosalind and Evan and their actions leading up to Howard's death. Rosalind owed $15,000 in unpaid state taxes related to the coffee shops. Leading right up to Howard's death, the phone was ringing off the hook, and the state was threatening to shut down one of the Phillips Coffee Bar locations. It also came out that her former employer, a dentist's office where she worked as a hygienist, claimed that Rosalind had stolen nearly $160,000, and in 1996, they demanded to be paid back. She never told Howard about the money she owed, but it seemed that she might have found a way to use him to pay it back. The district attorney claimed that Rosalind and Evan requested keys and security passcodes to the building where Howard's office was located. They also asked for information about the location of security cameras in the building lobby and how to close up the office at night, and then used those details to murder Howard on March 21st, 1996. One witness even testified they were surprised to see Rosalind in Howard's office, as it was not a regular occurrence. After Howard's death, Rosalind received over $1 million from 2 life insurance policies and ownership of Howard's businesses, which she sold off just months after his death. She also received an Upper East Side apartment and a summer home, as well as full custody of 10-year-old Philip. She paid off the state tax debt, and she pled guilty to grand larceny on charges filed from that money that she stole from the dentist's office. It was also paid back, and she received probation. In March of 2019, Rosalind was in court again, facing much more serious charges. They planned it as a trap, and they set it up as a trap, Elizabeth Lederer, the lead prosecutor, told jurors during closing arguments, and he didn't stand a chance. The defense called out there was no physical evidence actually tying them to the scene, and this case was largely circumstantial. About the cut on Evan's hand, they commented, "So what? He cut his hand. That doesn't prove he murdered anybody." After 4 days of jury deliberations, the State Supreme Court of Manhattan found Rosalind and Evan guilty of second-degree murder. Sanford Talkin, Rosalind's lawyer, told CNN, "We are disappointed in the verdict and plan to appeal and continue to fight the case." Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance said, "For nearly 23 years, Rosalind Pilmar and Evan Wald evaded justice for their gruesome crime and thought they would get away with it. But today, a jury rightfully found them guilty of murder in the second degree for planning Mr. Pilmar's murder together and acting in concert to carry out the cold-blooded killing. I thank the prosecutors and my office's cold case and forensic sciences unit and NYPD detectives for more than 2 decades of dedication to this case and ensuring that Howard's death was never forgotten." Frank Pilmar, Howard's father, now 88 years old, said that he had almost given up. "My prayers have been answered. We knew she murdered Howard. Even at the funeral, we knew it." Case cracked. There's something about cases like this that always break my heart. I think it just makes me consider the institution of marriage and how important that is to me personally, and then to see other people that use it in different ways, or that struggle in it, or that just completely abuse it, like in this case. I mean, she essentially turned it into an insurance payout to get her out of trouble. I don't know. It kind of breaks my heart that this is where marriages can sometimes lead. And just, I can't believe the planning that they had to go to pull this off. But then they were just leaving traces of it all over the place. I mean, I looked into this case more, and there were so many employees that had the little pieces of information. It was like they knew it was strange, but they just couldn't tie it together with physical evidence. And even the way the case went, it did go pretty much as a largely circumstantial case. We know that Evan was in the office. We know that Rosalind had also said that she was there. So any type of DNA that's found at the location or anything like that doesn't necessarily help this case unless it was related specifically to the murder weapon, which I didn't bump into any information about in this. But the cut on his hand, could that have been a telling sign? You know, a lot of times in these attacks, people will use like more conventional knives, like kitchen knives or something like that. And kitchen knives don't really have a hilt to them. They're not built with any type of guard to stop your hand from sliding down them if you're using them in a forward motion. So a lot of times if people are attacking others and they're using a knife like that, they'll wind up cutting their own hand because their hand will slip up to where the blade is and actually cut them, which I have a feeling is what happened to Evan's hand. But even despite the fact that they've been charged and there's plenty of information about this case, I can't tell you for certain if that's what really came out. So what do you guys think about this case? Broken hearts can do really strange things to people, make them act in very bizarre ways. But then you also have this secret in here of all this money that she owes, ripping off a previous employer and then not paying state taxes on the businesses that she's running, and how that could have affected Howard directly. I mean, he's tied to those businesses as well. One of them is literally in his larger business. And if the state was going to close down one of those locations that was related to his office supply shop, that could have been really, really bad. It could have cost them much more than the $15,000. I'm honestly kind of shocked that it was that amount. That she wasn't able to make that payment in some way, or have just been honest with her husband about, hey, we've got taxes to pay on this business and I messed up and we need 15 grand to cover it, something along those lines. I think even with a pending divorce coming, which we also don't know, was he talking to her about? Was that part of the motivation in this attack? Quite possibly. But even with the pending divorce coming, it's pretty clear to me that Howard was a really good businessman. And I think if he would have known about some type of financial risk to one of his businesses like that, he would have headed it off, or he would have done the right thing with that anyway. At least that's my assumption about what I know of him just by looking into this story. So let's talk about it in the comments below. And before we end today's episode, I have many new patrons to thank, and I just want to say that you guys are really moving me with the support lately. I've been asking more for your help, and you guys are really stepping up. All of these patrons came on within a matter of just 3 or 4 days, so thank you guys so much. Every single $1 patron helps. The less I need to rely on YouTube's ad monetization, the better for the channel, the better for the cases I'm helping. I want to keep helping these people. I don't want to have to fold up because all of a sudden the ad revenue disappears. So you guys are absolutely making that a possibility. Big thank you to Crystalline Hinterseer. Hey, Crystalline, I know I talked to you on Twitter quite a bit. M. Locking, Anna Anderson, Jennifer Greaves, Kurt Ginling, Sydney Bizecker, hope I'm saying that right, Sydney, Giovanni Speed, Christy Lee, Katie Alosi, Faith Steele, Monica Jean Krause, Brooke Bunn, Maria Lara, Dr. Stu, Becky Geiger, Kendra Jed Allison, Hannah Wickman, Shannon Sadler, and Carrie Tabata. Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate the support. And if you are interested in joining that list, you can support me on Patreon or PayPal over at www.LordanArts.com. There's also merchandise you can buy. It all supports the channel. Please go and check that out. Take care, everyone. I'll see you back here on Friday for the live stream. Hope to see you there, right here on the LordanArts channel.